was sort of not.
Bless you.
Okay. So when this project was not sort of talked about as much as many of your other films over the years, I mean, was there a point in time where you felt like, I think he's getting it. Was there a point in time where you felt like you needed to return to this, that it didn't receive as much attention as you would have liked compared to some of your other films?
What was the question?
Roman, or maybe that is the answer.
Can you hear me, Roman? It's Jackie.
Yeah, I can hear you, Jackie.
Yay!
I can hear you, and then when you do the same.
The question was quite long, but I can't remember what it was.
We at our age, Jackie, it's getting more and more difficult to remember anything.
No, but you do remember it. He's remarkable. He's, what age are you? You're about 19 now, aren't you, Roman? And he skis like an idiot, drives like a fool, and he's got more energy than I don't know who. So Roman hasn't changed very much since we started the movie way back in 1971. Are you all right, Roman?
I'm fine, thank you.
So,
really great.
Let me just
do the short version.
Always nice to see you.
So, Roman, the short version of the question, I'm looking over here because the camera's right here, but basically, was there a point in time where you decided that you felt like this film needed more attention, or did it just sort of other people brought it to you and suggested as much?
I felt I needed more attention.
No, the film. He's asking, when did you decide to revisit the film? This film.
You know, it was an accident, pure accident, that the lab in London, the technical lab, was getting rid of the old stuff and sweeping around.
Wow.
They contacted me asking what I want them to do with the negative of that picture, whether they can destroy it or I want them to send it to me or whatever the instructions from me they will follow. And my instruction was, hold on, wait a second. So I looked up at the film and I liked it after 40 or so, almost 40 years, and I decided I will give it a new life, and that's what you saw today.
So, speaking of that new life, at what point did you decide that it would make sense to add new footage, to add on this epilogue that we see in the film?
Well, I saw it a couple of times. I saw it with some friends, with my editors, and I thought I want to recut the picture. There's some great stuff in it, and it's very nicely done by my friend Frank Simon, who isn't with us anymore, alas. But it's a bit oldish, and the pace was not satisfying. So I thought it will need some editing, little editing, and I would like to add to it the contemporary part. So I called Jackie and his son Mark, who subsequently became the co-producer of this enterprise. And I showed them the picture, I saw what you thought, and they were all very happy with the idea of giving it this new life. And that's, once again, what you see today. When I started editing, I realized there is much more to be done than I was expecting. It took me a long time. We did an enormous amount of work on it, to have it in the present shape, to have it in a pace which today is acceptable. And then when I had it all put together, I would not say entirely, but in good shape to revisit it again with Jackie. And that's what we did, literally. I managed to get the same suite in Hotel de Paris in Monaco. We put the television on the, to the similar position that you see it in the picture. We ran it, and then we did the conversation that was filmed by Pavel Edelman and his assistant.
And Sir Jackie, when Roman came to you about doing this, I mean, what was your relationship to the film, and how had it developed over the years?
Well, Well, I think most of the charm of the film, and what I think has made it most interesting, because I've now been to showings of the film. For Roman, I think it was a fantastic cadeau, if you like, in French, for the Cannes Film Festival to select Roman's film of 40 years ago, to rerun it in front of everybody in Cannes this year was a big deal. And I think Roman's name, his reputation, his skills and everything spoke for themselves. And when I saw the film again, it was like stepping back in history. And I think this is one of the attractive things. I've just done an interview with Sports Illustrated and with Road and Track magazine. And I think the appeal that's causing people to like it, certainly in Europe, is the fact that, safety was totally different in those days. Roman did a lot of this filming himself. I mean, he was working the cameras in a great many parts of the movie. But when you see the cars passing the pits as they are, there was no barrier in front of the pits, for example. And there's hundreds of gallons of high-octane fuel and hundreds of people standing there without any protection. Whereas today, because of what we've done in safety, that could never have been allowed to happen. So we stepped back in time, and many of the people you will see in the film are no longer with us either because they were killed. Because at that time, if I was driving a racing car, as I was, for a 5-year period, there was a 2 out of 3 chance you were going to die. And because of the lack of safety, which you see all the way through the film, the Roman's film, the curbs are like normal sidewalk curbs. They break tires and wheels and everything in those days. Now they're chamfer curves, and you see that again because Roman saw the logic of rerunning today's Monaco Grand Prix circuit as it was then. It was a totally different place in many ways, but the geography of the track was the same. And I think it took somebody of Roman's skills and imagination, because he's got a great imagination, to say that it would still run and be interesting today.
Now, Brett, this isn't the first documentary that you've worked on. There's been films ranging from Catfish to the John Cazale piece at the Portrait a few years ago, but obviously
Woody Allen.
The Woody Allen documentary. But you also have a very well-documented friendship with Roman. So when did you kind of come into this equation and find out about this project?
I don't remember when it was, but maybe Roman has a better memory than myself, actually. I was in Paris, and he said, I just finished a documentary. I just finished a documentary that I'd done in 1971. Would you like to see it? And Roman and I sat in the theater, watched it. It was amazing. I just thought it was brilliant. I'm a big fan of Mr. Stewart, and I'm also a big, Formula One fan, and I had seen a trend of Formula One growing in the United States, obviously with the Senna documentary really performing well, and he was the best thing in that documentary, and now Rush and all these films. So I thought it was great to get distribution for the film and give it an opportunity to see the light of day. It had never been released in the United States. I think it was only in one theater in Paris and maybe the German Film Festival. Back in the day, because there really wasn't an outlet for documentaries back in 1971. There wasn't HBO and Showtime and all these outlets that are playing documentaries today. So, and very grateful to the Braun family with Submarine Deluxe to distribute this film and get it into theaters, because it's worthy of that. This movie was made for the big screen. Even though it will live on television, it'll live on Netflix eventually, it'll live in other places, on iTunes, on DVD. Roman and myself were very happy that Submarine Deluxe is going to present it in exhibition in theaters, which is really exciting, because that's where it exists. That's where it was originally made for.
One of the other things, Roman, from my point of view, is we've been good friends since the mid-60s, because Roman was a great enthusiast of motor racing. He drove Ferraris, and he was a bit of a racer. For us to be friends then and have been friends ever since, it's like the clocks never stop. Wow. And that's close. And then, because my son Mark, who's got what I would call a boutique production company and does some wonderful films, got involved. For him to work with Roman Polanski was a fantastic privilege. And for me at the time with my wife Helen, to put up with Roman Polanski for the entire weekend, ruffling Helen's hair up. And she's still in bed and he's ruffling her hair up. You've got to look as if you've just woken up. Here's poor Helen, 90, being roughed up. So these are the great memories that pass by that you forget about. You know, because of the pace of our lives today and the pace of my life at that time. I was just doing that interview I told you with Road Track and so forth. When Roman shot the film, I at that time had mononucleosis. I had crossed the Atlantic 86 times that year.
Wow.
Back and forward because of doing work with ABC's WhO Sports and Roone Arledge and Jim McKay and these guys. But I was also doing Can-Am and I was doing Formula One, of course, and we won the World Championship that year. But the shot that some of you may have seen, if you haven't, you will, I'm signing autographs as I'm walking in Monte Carlo at the Grand Prix, and I look as if I'm dead. You know, I'm just exhausted, and this was the mono.
Wow.
But Roman's got energy unbelievably. I mean, as I say, he would take the camera because he saw a shot that he wanted to take, and he would use that immediately. And that's why it's such an unusual film. It's yesterday. I mean, it's nothing like the modern films, if you like. But I think that's what brings the charm.
Well, I think also what's beautiful about the film and what touched me really was not only the reunion after so many years, but the friendship and that you felt in the movie, and these two guys together, kind of from their you kind of walking him through the race and how you were going to actually win the race and what the other guys were making, the mistakes they were making, and all those details. And the dynamic between the two was beautiful, captured on film in 1971, which was, like you said, capturing history.
Yeah, but I liked the bit at the end. You know, when the two of us, 40 years later, being in the same suite, in the same hotel, and the two of us still being alive, apart from nothing else.
Incredibly poignant.
We've been quite busy, both of us.
to bring Roman back into the conversation.
Roman today is still, more than alive.
Well, we can
Well,
see
I
that.
really think that your great achievement is to be with us today, actually. Because when you think of it 2 against 1, you had a great chance to be on the other side as well, and you were not only a great champion to win the championship, but also to be with us together. And somehow you were that little bit better than the others, those who are no more.
But Roman, before we open it up to questions from the audience, by the time this film was completed, you had already made Rosemary's Baby, and so you had achieved a certain amount of celebrity yourself. So I'm wondering, when I watch a film like this, and you're sort of getting into Jackie's world and understanding his fame, could you relate to any elements of that as well?
Excusez-moi, il y a trop de... I'm sorry, there's too much light here. Thank you. What were your question about Rosemary's Baby, the other films, and what?
Yeah, how did you relate to the sort of fame that Jackie had at that time, having already achieved a certain amount yourself?
Well, there was no competition between us, if that's what you mean. I mean, he was in a different field altogether. I mean, it was great. I was admiring him when I was doing Rosemary's Baby. That was about the time when two of us met in Los Angeles. He was in his field, I was in mine, and we were both quite successful. The reason I made the film was first because I wanted to make a film about a friend, about Jackie specifically, and two, because I liked that sport very much, and I thought it was a very cinematic, very visual kind of sport, and people were not really filming that much, because there was no television every week where you could watch the Formula One race. When I did this film, I would virtually could, on the count on a fingers the number of cities that it was exhibited, and and maybe even the number of spectators in certain cases. Film was shown in few theaters in London. It went to Berlin, to one of the first Berlin film festivals, and won some prize there for a documentary. Was shown in a couple of theaters in Germany, and that's it. Went into the vaults of Technicolor Lab. So the real life the film may have right now.
What's amazing also is the way that you shot it, Roman, because knowing how they shoot Formula One now, where the cameras are really off the track, it felt as if that you guys were actually, the cameras were actually there as the cameras were racing by. Is that correct?
Well, Roman, we had a car set up with a camera, and I was doing some laps during Grand Prix weekend. Because it was Roman Polanski, we had total access to the circuit, to the Principality. Princess Grace and Prince Rainier knew about everything that was happening. We had total access with the Automobile Club. And we were getting time to go out onto the racetrack, some of it was a wet day, going out there, and the camera was on the car. People did not put cameras in the car in those days. Wow. Now we've got up to 3 and 4.
I think it was the first time when we filmed camera on board. I remember at that time people thought even we were crazy when we started mounting this camera on your car. I remember that people were looking at us. That's the madman. And even Terrell was not very happy about it.
Well, because it goes against the rule of keeping the car light, right? You were adding pounds on the car.
Oh yeah, and structure. I mean, it was like the Eiffel Tower in the back of the car. And Ken Tyrrell, who was the team owner and was an amazing man in himself, and he had great engineering on the car, and suddenly we're taking this structure and putting it on, and here's a fella called Roman Polanski, and oh my God, how long are we going to put up with this, says he, as we're trying to win the Monaco Grand Prix. So it was a lot into a small period of time.
Sorry, can I ask a question? When Roman called you, do you remember when he first called you and said, I want to do a film about you? Was it always planned for the Monaco Grand Prix, or was it just fall on that date?
No, it was a conversation, I think, over dinner one night. And he said, what about doing something together? And I thought, well, that would be fantastic. I mean, I think any of us, Roman's a super successful man. Whoever's successful, you look at somebody else and you always think they're more successful than you are. And I thought, wow, if he really is serious about doing this, this would be great. And it was cinema verite in those days. I think at the time, Roman, you called it the docudrama, because it was telling a true story with death being part of our life at that time, and we were losing drivers all of the time. The concept of putting all this together and making it happen with somebody as important as Roman Polanski. If it hadn't been for it being Roman Polanski, I don't think it would ever have been made. Wow. I don't think anybody else would have got the kind of access and complete freedom to go around the racetrack with cameras and do it while the Monaco Grand Prix weekend was on, which is probably still the most important Grand Prix in the calendar in the world because of where it is and its history.
How do you think Roman would do back then in the Grand Prix as a racer?
I said in the film, as a film producer, he wasn't a very good driver. No, he loved
in the film, Jackie. That's enough.
No, but he was an enthusiast.
Wait a second, going back to the origins, I think if I remember correctly, the conversation of the dinner must have happened in Monaco a year or 2 years before this race, when we were walking. Once you took me around really every single pit during the days in Monaco, and the atmosphere of that place, the glamour, the joy actually, because people, strangely enough, it's very difficult to believe now, were really happy and joyful,
Yeah.
It has not the atmosphere of today. And it must have happened a year or 2 years before this race, but it might have started in the same place.
And sorry, did you know, Jackie, that you were going to win that race?
Hell no. I mean, you could call it luck, call it whatever you like, but we could have been taken out on the first corner.
Right.
The Monaco Grand Prix is famous for people not getting past the first corner because it's a street, it's much narrower than a racetrack as we know them today.
Right.
And, it's a fairy tale, if you like, that Roman has this idea and we worked on it together and we actually won the race.
That's crazy.
Which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So, these things do happen in life, and this is a jewel.
Bashir. My religion is called Bashir.
So we want to make sure to leave some room for some questions from the audience, but we'd like to ask people to come up here and use the microphone so that Roman can see you on the camera as well. So,
I can see this lady very well.
He's always had an eye for the lady.
I have a question for both of you, and I actually have presents for you. I don't think I can give you yours, but maybe you can get it. I host a show called ReW, and I want to give you a t-shirt, and if you want to give one to Roman one day, that would be amazing. Roman Polanski, you're just an idol to everyone, and I just have, if you found a genie in a bottle, what would your 3 wishes be?
What my wishes? One of how many wishes?
3.
3 wishes, that's a lot. Well, I don't know if that genie could do miracles. I would see Jackie winning another race again.
Okay.
I would like myself to do a good movie. And I wish for my son to get out of that stupid teenage period.
Okay. And Jackie, did you ever have an experience with a car, telepathic, the car spoke to you? Because I actually had that happen to me, and I never thought it could, but I wonder, did you ever have a personal relationship
With?
a vehicle, with a car?
Well, the car is an animal to me. It's a very human animal sometimes. You communicate with a racing car at the highest level. A Formula One car is a highly strung unit that is like, for me, a person. The relationship I had with my car was a very close one. And in those days, there was no telemetry. Nowadays there's 200 sensors in a car to tell the engineers where and what's happening. In those days, it was down to the driver. And many of the shots in Roman's film, you see me communicating with my chief mechanic, trying to explain to him what was happening, and it was suddenly dropping off in performance. So that communication system is almost man and machine being 2 animals together. And I've always described, to get the very best out of a racing car, you've got to caress it, you've got to touch it gently, you don't give it surprises, you don't get brutal with it, you coax it into doing things. Beautiful. And all of those things are really true, because you don't suddenly jump on the brakes, you caress the brake pedal to get the best out of it. And you don't have to jerk the steering wheel, you introduce it gently, and therefore the car's not surprised. All of these things are part of making the great drivers, whether it was the great Fangio, the great Jim Clark, the great Vettel of today, for example, or the American drivers like Parnelli Jones and A.J. Boyd, Mario Andretti and Dan Gurney and people like that. They were all doing that. So that relationship that you relate to is very close to being the unity of human.
Would you say it's similar to any sport, even baseball, for instance, in particular, where the older baseball players talk about how the bats are so high tech now, and the balls are going so much farther. So that it was much harder back then to hit a home run than it is today.
I actually don't think so. I think the technology has changed, like in motor racing, the Star Wars technology that you see. But I think the animal remains the same. I think the driver's the same type of person. I think that Babe Ruth wouldn't be any different than the greatest baseball player of today. And I don't think that Sebastian Vettel, who's just won his 4th World Championship, was any different, any better than Juan Manuel Fangio, who won 5 World Championships, and he didn't even start driving in Europe until he was 39 years of age. The animal is the same. But the technology changes. But you still have to have that human relationship in my mind. And the current driver may not have it at his young years. It was when I turned 30, and I retired when I was 34. But by then I had matured, and I was feeling and touching and experiencing more than just having to drive fast. So I think whether you're whether you're a filmmaker or whether you're a racing driver or a baseball or basketball player, somehow or other it changes as you gain experience. From experience you get knowledge. From knowledge and experience you sometimes get wisdom. Sometimes you even mature. So I think all these are part and parcel.
Another question over here.
Mr. Polanski, it is an honor to meet you personally. I am quite a fan of your work. As a young director who is up and coming, such as myself, what advice could you give someone of today?
And her last name is Stewart.
And ironically, my last name happens to be Stewart.
Question of patience and perseverance. That's all I can tell you. You can't teach talent, but you can tell someone how to sustain the adversity, which is our enemy constantly on the set. Whatever you do, whatever type of film you make, it requires a crew, requires financement, requires a lot of people around you. And those people, even they are all with you, even they are all friendly, and even if they all agree that the final result is the only thing that counts, they have each of them and their personal agenda. They see certain things different that you do, and they think that certain things can be done different way, maybe better in their opinion. And then they have their personal problems. They have families and children and the girlfriends, and they're horny or whatever. So what you really need is to be patient and to be able to withstand all those problems daily.
Roman, since you haven't really made any other documentaries, I mean, what is your relationship to this medium, given how satisfied you were with the project? I mean, did you ever want to make more documentaries?
Well, yes, I did. I never considered myself talented in this direction. I didn't consider myself a director of documentaries, particularly in that period. Documentaries were not as frequently successful as they are now. There are many more of them done because of the television in the first place. You see many more documentaries in the theaters. In those times it was very, very seldom that you could hope to have any kind of success with a documentary in general theatrical release. So in those times when I decided to make this film, I asked my friend Frank Simon to direct it. Frank was a young American director from New York, whom I met in Cannes during the film festival. He was showing a documentary called The Queen. It was about the first drag queen contest in New York. And it was a very good documentary, funny and unusual and quite daring. Unfortunately, it was famous May 1968, where there was a kind of revolution in France, students' revolution, and the festival was aborted. So Frank never got the prize. But I got a friend with this festival, and we brought him, because we're a bunch of friends in fact, to London. He was living with us, and I decided to make this film. I said, I'll produce it, you direct. And the first Weekend of the Champion was done by Frank Simon. I worked a lot on it. I filmed, I often had camera in hand. I helped with the editing, etc. But he did the first version of this movie.
Hello, Mr. Polanski, and it's an absolute honor to meet you. I'm launching, excuse me, it's an absolute honor to meet you. I represent the Fashion Institute of Technology, and we're launching a film program. Now, you're one of the few truly international film producers.
I didn't understand you, sorry. There's a kind of echo, you know, garbles a little bit what I
hear. Can you hear me?
Put it closer to your mouth.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I represent the Fashion Institute of Technology. My name is Nagla Sharma. We're currently launching a film program. We're fashion, but we're launching film. Now, you're one of the few truly international film producers. We are a melting pot. We're in New York. Can you give me a piece of advice that we can relay to our student body that will assist us in launching international films?
I think you have your man there. Look a little bit more to the right. He's sitting on the right side of the stage. That's the guy you should ask for this type of advice. You know? Brad?
Yes?
Speak up.
We'll talk after this. Let's talk about the film and then we'll exchange.
Thank you.
Okay.
We have time for just one or two more, I think, and then we'll wrap right here in the front.
Hey, Jack, this question is for you. I know you're good friends with George Harris, and I know how much involved he was with the stock car racing. It may not be related to the film, but I think it's important. He wrote a song called Faster about you, too, I believe. So I wanted to ask you about that.
Well, George Harrison was a very good friend, one of my best friends, one of my family's best friends, Mark Stewart, who's here today, and Paul Stewart, grew up in Friar Park, where is the home of still Libby, his widow. And George played a big part in my life. It was at that time, the same time as Roman and I were friends. George was a great friend of mine. The Beatles came to the Monaco Grand Prix many times. Ringo and George came even more times than the other guys. But one of the most creative men I've ever known in my life, one of the best brains I've ever shared with a person. A combination of, at that time, being friendly with Roman and being friendly with George was a very nice time when there was real true individuals with tremendous skills hanging out. And that was the swinging 60s and the 70s. And they just were exciting periods. And the music that these boys were putting out at that time still live today. I've got 9 grandchildren, and they love the Beatles, you know, still to this day. And George had an enormous, not just imagination, but vision, and was just one of the great people that I've ever met. And by the way, he liked motor racing.
You made me think now of one fact of that period. It was that we met a lot, you know. There were places that we, particularly in London, that people like Beatles, Rolling Stones, racing drivers, photographers would cross practically every day, or at least once, twice a week, you know. It was entirely different society, different period, different mood. It seemed somehow more joyful. Even if we look at the parts of this film that you just showed, you know, that are beyond the race itself, you see people are, you know, you see more smile in those times.
Hi, was there a part of you that...
Put it closer to your mouth.
Was there a part of you when revisiting the original film, you sensed that there was a certain very modern aspect of it, a certain citizen journalism, a sort of certain very, you know, honest and, you know, more open look at what was going on that is more contemporary now?
No, definitely, but it's very difficult to assess whether it's the reason of this great change. The reason of this great change is the intrusion of electronics in our daily life. You know, it probably has to do a lot with the change. It's just not the same. You can see the papers, the newspapers that some of you may like, how they evolve. copy in each number and more photographs, sometimes completely banal and without any interest taking place of the text. So I don't know whether you can just see this change because the whole society is changing, or simply because it's the intrusion of the electronics.
Just to answer part of that question for you, is that I think the world's become more complicated. For example, the camaraderie, the friendship, the closeness that I had with all my fellow drivers does not exist today because of things like that.
That's exactly what I was trying to say, it's just much less of that.
Yeah, nowadays the access to the racing driver is more ridiculous. In my day, we were mixing because we didn't have not just motorhomes, there's structures in Formula One, enormous buildings. A racing driver today has his own place, he has his own massage room with his own trainer and his own, shower and his own everything. In our day, we were changing in the back of the transporter. And at the same time, we were holidaying together, we were moving together, we were traveling together. We were much more exposed to each other. And therefore the unity of our friendships was deeper. Today it's more distant and there isn't that closeness, and I think the same applies to every other industry, and I'm sure the movie industry is no exception. So times they do change, sometimes for the best, other times for the less good, because I adored my time with all of my close friends. The grief that came with it, however, was that so many of them died, and we probably were more exposed to that. But that emotion was there for deeper, and you shared more with each other. So that perhaps the speed of the world that has revved up much faster than it ever was is part of what we've lost, I think.
We're going to squeeze in 2 more questions. Just make sure to come up here.
For Mr. Stewart, I just want to say I think you made such an incredible contribution by talking about your dyslexia and the difficulties and how Mr. Polanski didn't even know about it for many years. I've never heard anybody articulate anything as clearly as you talked about the pavement and the car and getting control and just the very question that the first person asked you. And I just wondered if you'd say anything about that, and did your dyslexia get in the way at all of anything in your career, your driving career?
Oh yes, I'm a severe dyslexic. I can't recite the alphabet. I don't know it. If you give me a hideous amount of money, I wouldn't be able to do it. I don't know the words of my own national anthem. I can't remember them. I don't know the words of the Lord's Prayer. I said them every day from 5 to 15 at school. I can't remember them. However, a dyslexic, because he or she can't think like the clever folk, you think out the box and you find new ways of doing things. I would be surprised if there wasn't a little bit of dyslexia in Roman Polanski. Steven Spielberg's dyslexic. George Lucas is dyslexic. A lot of entertainers are dyslexic. A lot of sports people, Muhammad Ali, is dyslexic. Because it brings out something that nobody else has. Your stupidity, if you like, because I was stupid, dumb, and thick at school. That was what my teacher told me I was in front of about 54 fellow students, because I couldn't do the things that they could so easily do. So when I've been explaining little things today, for example, I go on too long, because I assume all of you are as dumb as I am, and I have to be sure that you're understanding exactly what I'm trying to come across with. So I think artistically, lots of people have learning disabilities, and dyslexia is by far the most popular. But I think it actually can help, because there are things that I've done better in business than I ever did in motorsports in a way. And that again was thinking out of the box, not doing it the same as everybody else. If you went to Harvard, you're taught to go around one superhighway. The highway is very congested. If you take the rural road, it's less competitive, and you get through it easier. So dyslexia, although very sad at school time, has in fact somewhat, I think, been to some advantage. Mark Stewart, my son who's here, is as dyslexic as I am. But it was a disability, categorically a disability, during my educational period, which was very short. I left school at 15 with nothing. And it's the greatest loss of my life. But on the other hand, I've been blessed in other ways.
Thank you.
Thanks. Luke Vargas with the Talk Radio News Service. This is a question for Mr. Stewart. There's a scene at the end of the movie where you're in your hotel room celebrating and the champagne irritates a blister on your hand. Are there other scenes like that, scenes that Roman was able to capture in the film that you maybe would have forgotten about in the rush with the illness you had at the time and everyone rushing for your autograph, scenes that you're very happy to see again so many years later?
Well, I cut myself shaving, which is in the film. I do that often. Roman was there. That's exactly the access, and that's exactly why the movie's that different from everything else. I don't know. I think life has its ways with you, and you get through them and you get round them. And I feel that in my particular case, I'm so lucky. I mean, I never drew blood from my body driving a racing car. I mean, that's something in today's world. And it's now, I just done something with a journalist. We just identified it as 19 years, 7 months, and 3 days since we lost the life of a Grand Prix driver in Formula One. Millimeters apart, human error, mechanical failure. These things have changed the world, changed people. They don't think of danger the same way as I did. They didn't fear it today as I feared it then. And they never had the loss experience, but they never had some of the highs either. But I think life does go on, and the dyslexia and the core of your question exactly is what? Sorry, I missed the core.
Just if seeing the film this many years later, it was a very intimate, as you've already mentioned, access he was able to have. Are there other scenes in the movie, things he was able to document that are amazing for you to see this many years later?
I think my own frustration at one point, talking to Roger Hill, who was my #1 mechanic, struggling to identify how the car was behaving and what was knocking it off to the end of its grip in too sudden a fashion. And I was struggling personally to verbalize that reaction so that he could understand what component might have been responsible for that particular breakaway, which was so sudden that it was limiting me to get a faster lap in. So these are the things in the film that I think are unique, and that's why Roman is the man he is, and the team that he had around him at that time brought those little things out that today would not be relevant to a current racing driver. But if that current racing driver had more experience of doing that, he would actually override some of that telemetry by verbalizing in a human sense to that engineer. And sometimes these are the things that happen, and I'm sure they happen in filmmaking just as much as they do in motorsport. So the film is unique in that respect. There's been nothing ever done that would compare with what Roman did in putting that whole thing together. It's a bygone past.
There was, if I can remind you certain things that are either not in the picture or which are in the picture, but you people may not have guessed what they mean or are. After Jackie is being kissed by the prince, he brings some kind of rag to his mouth and looks like he's wiping his face with it. In fact, he was vomiting after the race into that rag. There are little things that I cut from the later sequence because simply there were too many things. Like when we once again go around the track, the modern track, towards the end of the film, in this what that car was called, that open little car that it was like, that mini thing. At one point...
No, it was like a little beach buggy.
Yeah, that's kind of beach body, not really real. But when we passed the same manhole to which Jackie points at the beginning of the film, and he says we start breaking just now. Remember, I cut the bit modern bit when Jackie shows where they are breaking now, but it's about what would you say, 50 meters later after that manhole.
Exactly, 50 meters later. I mean, the brakes, the aerodynamics, the downforce of the current motor racing car, Formula One particularly, which is the sharpest end. Where I was driving, let's say in a faster circuit in Monaco, if I were braking at 180 to 200 yards or meters, they were braking at 50. And you just can't believe that. When I went out in a Formula One car not too long ago, when I did a couple of laps, and I said, oh, don't worry, I know the circuit. I was braking at my braking points. I had to downshift to accelerate to get to the corner. This thing had stopped so quickly. It's just a different era. But these are the subtleties, and if the modern Grand Prix driver, Lewis Hamilton or Sebastian Vettel were to be watching the movie, they say that, that, by the way, that manhole cover's still in the same place, and they'll say, Jesus, we're still full on the throttle passing that manhole cover. So that's the change in all these years. So that's just part of where we are and the period of our life that we were living as racing drivers, and it was all caught up in this film.
Beautiful. Just to wrap things up here, since Brett briefly alluded to it earlier, obviously the big racing film is out right now. It's Rush. So I'm wondering, have either of you seen the film, and do you think that any fictionalized attempt to kind of replicate what it's like to be in that sort of situation, can really convey what it's like?
Well, Roman, you've seen Rush, haven't you?
Yeah, I've seen the Rush, and I can tell you at the beginning I thought, oh my God, I think I'm going to walk on it, but I somehow sat through, and it gets better and better, and it finally, after I would say a few minutes of patience, it gets you really involved and very satisfying. I think it's a great couple of actors looking exactly like the fellows we both knew, and it's a very good movie, I think. I think that movie doesn't enjoy the success that it deserves. It's a really nice motor racing movie.
I think so too. I've seen the movie, and I like it. I think the actor that plays Niki Lauda, I think he's so good that I would like to see him nominated, because he was better than Lauda. I mean, he studied him so clearly, and his walk, his expressions, the manner in which he lived his life. This guy really caught him, and I hope he gets a nomination. But I like the movie.
I'd like to just really quick, because as we're going to wrap it up, point out, I don't know if you remember, last time you were in Cannes, Roman, you did a film called Seduced and Abandoned by James Toback. It's playing on HBO right now. You guys should check it out. It's fantastic. And James Toback is in the audience. Wave hi to Roman, James.
Hi, James. Looking forward to seeing the picture.
He's sending you a DVD, and it's great to see you. And also another friend of yours is here. Raise your hand, Patrick de Marchelier. Say hi, Patrick. You know Patrick?
Of course.
And another friend of mine is here, the director of Capote, my friend Bennett Miller. He directed Capote and Moneyball.
And congratulations, I love Capote.
The very first question that was asked.
So directors are friends with each other.
Well, that's good. Like racing drivers. But the first question that was asked by this lady down here in the front row, the three wishes. One of our three wishes is that Roman could be here today.
Me too. That was the wish I was thinking. Yes, I agree. And I think we're not the only people that feel that way.
So on that note, thank you, all three of you, for being here.
Thank you.